Hello, friends. We've missed you. It's been a little bit, but some of us were lollygagging and traipsing across Grand Paris
Mhm.
and the British Isles,
Yep.
Laura Shaw, and some of us were attending conferences and whatnot. But nevertheless, we are here. Welcome back to O for Dying Out Loud. I'm your host, Angie Cat, Magical Life Midwife, and joining me is the Divine Death Doula, Laura Shaw. Hello, friend.
Hi, friend.
So we were thinking about, gosh, it's been a couple weeks. What do we want to talk about? Because, you sort of feel like you can only talk about death so much, and yet death is ever present,
Yep.
and there's different flavors. And so we thought maybe talking about, again, navigating grief
Hmm.
over the years.
Yeah. Yep.
And how this came up was because some of you know that I adopted, or maybe you don't know, I adopted two new kitties last September after my beloved Toby, who I had for 18 years, 18 and a half years, passed away. And um, it seemed like the right time. I felt like I was ready. And they're adorable, but they're different.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so they have very different needs, very different eating styles, very different play styles, whatever. And just this past weekend, it's been kicking up like, why am I missing Toby so much? I've got these two new cats. And it dawned on me that it's because of the fact that they're not Toby,
Hmm.
which again, I can't stress enough. It's not that I dislike these two cats at
You
all.
love them.
I
Yeah.
love them. They've got me wrapped around their little toe bean.
Hmm.
But it's just navigating that, oh, that's not how Toby used to do it. Like the
Right.
big thing is that these cats are not as cuddly as Toby used to be. They'll come sleep with me, but they don't necessarily like to be held all that much. They don't like to sit in my lap for very long. Whereas Toby was all about cuddling, and I miss that ooey gooiness. And
Hmm.
because I've got these two cats, I'm like, I want some of that ooey gooey, and they're just like, we
No.
don't. So yeah, so my tears have been kicking up, and I've been missing him and everything like that. And I thought, this is probably, I would guess that this is a common occurrence for others, depending
Yeah.
on a pet loss and or the loss of a mom, spouse, partner.
Yeah. So when you brought up this topic, I thought, well, how timely. A couple of things are true. We just had Mother's Day. So
Mhm.
um, that brings up a lot of, pain for lots of reasons. So it can be the loss of your own mother, it can be the loss of a child, it can be the estrangement from your mother or child. There's lots of different reasons that this kind of is a perfect timing to talk about this topic. My grandmother, my grandma Herman, I should say, she has been gone from this existence for 14 years, 16 years, I think. And Facebook reminded me that 10 years ago I had posted on Mother's Day, like what, I miss her every day. And so I shared again, I miss her every day. And I got very weepy. I shared it with my mom, who also got weepy. And yeah, it's it is so common and
Mhm.
so misunderstood, I think, because it makes people uncomfortable. You and I have talked about this before, how you know, somebody has a spouse that dies and no one knows what to say, or a child who dies, and no one
Right.
knows what to say. But also, it's kind of like when a friend, a woman or a man gets divorced, and everyone's like, "Nope, they got to go over here," because you don't want the sad
Right.
rub off on you.
Right.
And it's not. It's. I mean, I understand we're just not equipped for that always. So
Yeah.
instead, we have grief support groups.
Right.
So,
Right.
where everyone in the room gets, they talk about their sadness in a room together away from everybody else.
Right.
Which is kind of how we've always treated it in our country at least.
Yeah.
And maybe didn't always show it the understanding or the space it needed.
Mhm.
So I think it's absolutely acceptable for number one, for people to grieve at different times
Right.
for different reasons. Um, and I think that it's acceptable to, it's not that you are comparing your kitties to
Mhm.
Toby.
Mhm.
You're missing pieces of Toby that aren't being fulfilled anymore. And
Right.
even if they're being fulfilled,
Mhm.
you will still miss Toby. Like
Right.
so that
Yeah.
that won't change.
Yeah.
So that is because you will carry those pieces of him and those memories of him forever.
Right, right. Well, and Facebook is good about reminding me pictures.
Yeah.
10 years ago, he was curled up in your lap, it's like,
Oh, you're like,
yeah. But I
stop.
think what you're saying is that this is normal. And we've
Yeah.
had, we've talked a little bit about the fact that that's part of the grief thing that is a little tricky for some, is that
Mhm.
there is no defining time when the grief is over.
Right.
Right? And we want it to be over, right? I think that's part of the
Yes.
challenge is that it's just like, it should be done. It should be done and over with it. The book is closed. And it doesn't work that way,
No, no.
it doesn't work
And
that way.
I think if we really consider it, I think that we all might agree that while we might want it to be a little less painful or raw, and I do believe that it gets less raw over time. How
Yeah,
much time, I don't know. But that
right,
doesn't mean that some days it's not just absolutely ripped back open, or it's not just a really, and it doesn't have to be an anniversary. It doesn't have to be Mother's Day. It doesn't, it can be
right.
anything.
Something random.
Right. But I do think that it speaks to the love
Yeah.
and this, this energy that we shared with that
Mhm.
person or that
Right,
being,
right.
that there's this flow of love and energy, and we're
Mhm.
energetic bodies, and there will never be something quite the same. I have spoken with spouses who have lost their
Mhm.
partners, and even when they're ready to, or when they do, I just read an article on John Travolta. Someone's trying to get John Travolta to move on. And he was,
Really? Wait a
yeah,
minute, stop. There was an article that was talking
yes.
about
I didn't read the article, but yes, it was an article
the
about
fact
how
that he
friends
needed
are
to get over his wife.
yes, yes, who he was with for 30 years,
Wow.
and that he's just not opening up enough, opening up enough for another human. And I'm like, here's the thing, like, we all create these different relationships and
Right.
different levels. And I get it that we're social creatures and people worry that, but who says it's not like you can replace a person that you had in your
Right.
life? You can have
Right.
another person in your life. I could
Right.
have a spouse and then someone who becomes my spouse later. If
Mhm.
my first spouse is no longer with me, I could be with my second spouse, love them dearly, and they will
Mhm.
still not, it's not like they're replacing the first
Right.
one,
Right.
because that's
Yeah.
not how it works. Like, how could I
Right.
replace
Well,
you? I can't replace you.
no, but also too, I mean, even if we got that part, there's still a lot of emotions that
Yes.
are going to come up. I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
think about moving out of the house that you lived in for
Mm,
30 years.
yeah.
How hard that is for people,
Yeah.
right? There's a grief there
Yeah.
and a
Mm,
challenge, and they move into a new house and they still navigate those emotions because it's like, that's not the same couch we had,
right.
you know? and someone from the outside who doesn't know and has never experienced it will go, it's a couch.
Right.
It's just a
It's a
house,
couch,
right?
get over it. Mm-hmm.
You just
Yeah.
get over it.
Yep.
Then so there's that scenario, but then you factor in somebody that you've been with for 30, 40 years.
Yep.
Are you kidding me? Like there's just, you don't ever get over those people. They will
Right.
always be with you.
Yes.
I mean, from a spiritual standpoint, yes, they will always be with you no
Mm-hmm.
matter what. So that's a whole nother ball of wax. But, re-entering the dating world or, making any kind of relational connections is gonna feel different. And it's gonna
Yep.
feel like you're continually trying on, or you've got a new pair of shoes because you had to get a new pair of shoes or
Right.
whatever. And it just doesn't feel
No, you had
comfortable
the
yet.
perfect pair of shoes. You'd had them, they'd been with you through all of your trauma. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do such a disservice for all the right reasons.
Mhm.
There are so many phrases that people say, time will heal, you can
Yeah.
move on,
Right.
maybe it's time to move on, let go, there's
Yeah.
all these things, totally right intention. I am sure I have said these things to people in my lifetime.
Right.
And also probably just the least helpful things, I suppose.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because you and I have talked about this when we've had
Mhm.
death gatherings with people
Yeah.
to talk about death, where people are like, no, people just tell me I need to move on. My brother died, and
Mhm.
they, I need to move on. And then we put this, what I've seen is people really put this pressure on themselves, like there's something wrong with them because
Right.
this person who's been in their life for 40 years or their whole entire
Mhm.
life
Right.
is suddenly not there. And people around them may, like, they have been conditioned in our
Right.
to move on, to like get over it, or to like pack it away. It's like, only take it out on special occasions.
Right. Oh
And
my
it's like,
gosh.
come on, like you can't. I, as I've gotten older, especially, I lament things that I still remember what it smelled like in my elementary school. And it's not an elementary school. The building's still there, I think. They might have torn it down by now, but I still
Yeah.
remember what it smells like and what it felt like walking up and down those stairs. And
Right.
sometimes it makes me a little weepy to think I will never be back in that time and space. And that is a set of stairs in a building.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
right, not something that snuggled with me or something I kissed or
Right.
loved or
Right.
even had sort of, I mean, it's an inanimate object that's just exists there. So
Right.
um we are there's this energetic connection when you
Mhm.
meet someone,
Mhm.
and I think that it just grows, and I'm sure you
Mhm.
can speak to this far more than I can, that
Right.
the longer we know someone and the more interactions we have, the the more spider webs, as Joan Osborne would call them, aka cords, might be
Yeah.
another one, yeah, that you create with a person, and it just gets stronger and stronger.
Right.
And you can't ever sever that, I don't think. I don't even want to.
Right. Right. Exactly. Well, you can't. I mean, and to your point, it's funny because from the spiritual traditions that I've studied, there's several different ways we could look at it. The fact, the universal, I guess you could call it quantum physics, spiritual premise is that, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So your loved one discards their body, their soul is back into the energetic field.
Right.
So their energy is still there. It's never dead, never dead. Their body is composted into energy and may take a different form, right? So, from that standpoint, we know that, Toby, my grandparents, their spirit is always part of that energetic fabric.
Right.
It's never gone.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
that's the case, I mean, that's hard for a lot of people to kind of understand and to really embrace. because we're so attached to the physical form.
Right.
That's what we're really missing. And you really want to go down the rabbit hole. The memories technically don't exist because the only thing that exists is the now moment, right? So we are attached to memories in time that no longer exist. They existed, they still exist, but those actual memories. So it's a really convoluted web that then you throw grief in there and you go, well, what does this mean?
Right.
And we're not gonna spend this podcast trying to teach people in a crash course how, to think about this from a philosophical standpoint, and we're all gonna be enlightened. Sorry, I don't have those skills. It's not gonna happen. I'm not even halfway there yet.
Right.
But my point is that it's it's almost arrogant of us to think that we can figure this out and we can move past it.
Right.
Because there's just so many layers and nuances to it.
Yeah.
I can know that Toby is in the energetic fabric. I have seen him out of the corner of my eye. I know that his spirit is with me. I know he's trying to help those two get the lay of the land. That's what I believe, right? It doesn't take away the fact that I am navigating a new normal.
Right.
I'm navigating a new relationship. And that always brings up different emotions. It doesn't mean I need to package away the other stuff, right? That's an individual choice. I do believe that the more that we box it up and try to push it down and push it away and never look at it, it makes it that much harder from a mental health standpoint to navigate life, and in particular those instances, because it's just more challenging. But this sort of segues then into, let's talk about, how do we navigate this? What are some tips and techniques or ways of thinking about this that can help us to, I guess, soften it a little bit for us?
Yeah. So I think well, first of all, don't judge. Don't judge yourself when you're
Put
feeling
your
this
judgy
way.
finger away,
Yes.
particularly when you're looking in the mirror. Right?
Yes, we are our own worst critics. Honestly, I think holding space for people, I love to say to people, tell me about this person. Like, I want them to tell me. If I didn't know them, I want to know them through the eyes of the person, because even though I understand that my grandmother or Jennifer or my grandfathers I'm surrounded by energy and ancestors of people who were here before. I don't have them in the same time and space as me, and it's different. And so I miss that. I can miss that. And and that, I think, is something that all of us could do a better job. And sometimes it's because people are uncomfortable.
Well, yeah.
And they
to your
have boxed up their feelings. So allowing you to have your feelings might be very challenging for them. But I guess I would say to people that I want to be remembered. I want people to remember my crazy energy or my crazy
We'll
presence.
remember you. You've made an impression.
Like, you're in.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hopeful for. And
Yeah.
I want to give them that same opportunity to, just as long as I'm still here in this form, that their energy will never be gone. They'll always exist in me, with me.
Right.
And allow ourselves, I allowed myself to get very weepy and cry about the picture of my grandmother, and that was absolutely okay. Yes, it's been 16 years. I've done the math now. It's been 16 years. And even with all of that, it's just absolutely acceptable that I still am going to feel things sometimes. And it's not I have not lost a spouse.
Right.
So there's my full disclosure to you, I have seen lots of people who lost spouses and eventually they did find another person. My
Mhm.
grandma always told me that my biological grandfather was the love of her life.
Mm.
And my step grandfather, who was the only grandfather I ever knew,
Right.
was the best companion she ever had. And
Mm.
that they
Yeah,
were completely different
right,
and that they fulfilled different things for her. So
right. It's a both and
yes,
situation.
yes, yes.
Both and we
Mhm.
don't allow for that sometimes. You
Yeah,
can have both and.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
not that it wasn't still devastating to her to think about the loss of my
Of course.
grandfather, my biological grandfather, who, like I said, she said till her dying day, he was the love of her life.
Right.
But also she missed the companionship of my grandfather I knew growing up because he was just such a kind, lovely human being.
Right.
They were different humans and she allowed
Right.
them to be, and they served different
Yeah.
purposes in her life. It didn't take away
Yeah.
from her loss of either
Right.
one.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, and that's a whole nother thing in terms of, when you're talking about spouses, I mean, that can feel really threatening to the new person coming
Sure.
into that world unless they understand that, what, we will, we have this, I think, kind of a messed up view about the fact that, oh, you get married to your one and only, and that's it. And that may be the case, but when you factor in grief
Mhm.
and a loss, that there is somebody that could potentially come, into your life. And it's absolutely okay for you to still love and grieve that person who has been
Yes.
lost
Yeah.
and still have immense love for the new person.
Yes.
Like we get so threatened by that because we think it's got to be one or the other, and it's
Mhm.
not exclusive like that. I mean, from a spiritual standpoint, it's not exclusive, but so yeah, that and I love what you said, I like that you brought up the fact that it's been 16 years, because I think this is, again, just to reiterate the fact that there's no time limit.
None.
There's no time limit. Those tears are not a bad thing because it's your ability to tap into the deep well of emotion and love that is there,
Mhm.
that doesn't have a place to go because they're gone,
Right.
right?
Right.
What I would say to people is that, you said you want to be remembered, right?
Yeah.
And the in the Latina or the Latino heritage, Hispanic heritage, the Day of the Dead. I mean, their biggest philosophy is that if you forget you should talk about your past loved ones. Should even talk to them, the fact that they're not there anymore, because that's the remembering. And the moment that you stop doing that, it becomes what they call a second death,
Ugh,
because now you've forgotten them.
sure.
So, which I love that idea. So it's like, let's that's why we honor our ancestors. That's why we study history, and that's why we do genealogy and that kind of thing. But so that may come easier to some people than others, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
So what I would say is if you were one of those people that is deeply uncomfortable talking about your past loved ones, or having some of your family members or whatever talk about past loved ones, first of all, know that you're not alone.
Right.
Second of all, that is a possibility to feel that way, and you're valid in your feelings. Thirdly, recognize that and speak truth to that. What I would say
Right.
is, if someone is coming to you and they're in your presence and they want to talk about it and you just can't hear it, it might be kinder to say, I really want to be here to support you, but I can't. This is very uncomfortable, and I'm not yet comfortable processing that. So I'm sorry, but I can't be here to continue talking about them. And
Right.
that may seem terrible, but it's a lot kinder than
Mhm.
going, move on,
Right. Get over it.
get over it, right? So, because we have to acknowledge everybody's going to be at a different place,
Right.
So if you're not able to listen, if you're not able to hold that space, honor that and let that person know so that they can find somebody who will hold space
Mhm.
and will listen, you
I'm gonna,
know?
I'm gonna say something that might be slightly unpopular, sorry, friends, or controversial. There is a generational aspect to this, I believe.
Could be.
Not for
Mhm.
everyone, but I
Sure.
have noted that, oftentimes it can be an older generation that really, they came from a space of move on. You know,
Mhm.
when you're sad, wash some walls or
Right,
clean the house,
right,
or,
right,
don't give into it.
right.
And I think that along the way we have realized that that
Mhm,
is not maybe the healthiest way for people
mhm.
to do
Right,
things.
not for everybody anyway.
Right. And also, I think that maybe a younger generation, younger to me for sure, um, they have, they seem so much more in touch or able to name emotions.
Right.
Again, not everybody,
Mhm,
but I have witnessed the younger folks going through grief. Just like
mhm,
when we talked about children,
mhm.
they know what's happening and they seem so much more comfortable. And maybe it's because they
Yeah,
just haven't had a lifetime of shoving it down or being told to move on.
yeah.
But I I would appreciate someone saying, you know what, I can't talk about that, or I can't talk about that person, or my experience was different, or I'm uncomfortable. Um,
Mhm,
and if that happens, I think that then you give yourself the permission to either find a grief support group or find someone
mhm,
who will talk to you or allow you to talk. Like I truly believe that I can feel someone else's energy just based off of um
mhm.
the description in love. Like I get to see
See,
someone through the eyes of somebody else. Like I
yeah.
know that not everyone met Toby. He was an amazing kitty cat. And I hope and believe that other people can really feel his energy and your
Mhm.
relationship just based off of the times that you share with us.
Right, right, right.
So
Yeah.
if you don't have that, if your family or if someone does come to you and say, I just can't, it's too
Mhm.
upsetting or I'm not there, then
Right,
find people who can,
right.
uh,
Yeah,
when you need to, because that's a
right.
lovely thing.
Well, and I agree with you 100%. Now, I do want to put in there a little caveat there that if you or someone you know is unable to function in your
Yeah,
day-to-day life because of the grief, we're talking about real clinical depression,
right,
unable to go to work, unable to bathe themselves, unable to really function in any social situation without being a mess. That's a completely different scenario. And that needs professional help. That's grief counseling. That's, grief therapy. There are ways to help that person.
right,
But, the occasional thing, particularly around the holidays,
right.
that's normal for it to come up. "Oh gosh, do you remember grandma's cookies? Oh gosh, do you remember when we, used to do,
Mhm.
XYZ?" That's gonna come up, and that is absolutely normal. And it's not going to derail you for an entire day. So we're talking about kind of 2 different things here. We're
Right,
not really diving into the deep grief that is really impeding your ability to live your life. We're talking about the fact that this is why we started this podcast.
right,
This is why we talk about death, is because we don't talk about it enough to where we can feel comfortable with the topic. We can feel more at ease when someone else is crying over their pet that they lost a year ago
right.
or their grandmother that they lost 16 years ago.
Yes.
We can be with them in that moment. I
Hmm.
think it's well-being or with their emotions
Right.
in my experience, I will say, is that they understand that emotions are fleeting.
Right.
So they can access their sadness, their anger, what have you. It's uncomfortable, maybe for a few moments, maybe for a couple of hours or a half a day, but it's not going to disrupt their life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Those who are not as emotionally resilient or have that lexicon, those are the ones that I find have the greater difficulty, because the fear is what happened. Like, they're afraid, one, if the other person is going to show some emotion, they're sort of afraid that it's going to be this giant tidal wave that will drown them, and
Yeah.
there will never be an end to it. And underneath that, again, my personal belief is that, from experience also, is that that sometimes that is related to the fact that we are afraid of our own emotional tidal wave, right?
Yeah.
This is why we stuff everything down, is because
Mhm.
I am so afraid that this tidal wave is going to drown me and I will never be able to come up for air.
Right.
And I've seen some research articles about this where it talked about the fact that, from a physiological standpoint, being able to feel your feelings fully is super healthy, because your body naturally wants to move into homeostasis. So what happens is you let yourself have, and I'm sure everybody here has done it, maybe you haven't, but I know you and I have, where you just let yourself have what you call a, quote, good cry,
Yes.
right? A
Yeah.
good cathartic cry, you're
Mhm.
sobbing, whatever. How long does it last? Maybe a few minutes.
Yeah. Well, I don't
Maybe
have
a
the
few minutes,
energy for much more than that.
right?
Yeah.
Because your body goes, let's let it all out, let's get it out of our body. And then your body goes, great, now let's reset.
Yeah.
So if, that's one of the takeaways I would share with our audience, is that allowing yourself to feel your feelings, or allowing someone to feel their feelings, will take a lot less time
Right.
than if you would encourage them to stuff it, or you're stuffing it. Because let me tell you, when that clasp on that Pandora's box opens, it's far more messy and
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot longer to deal with
Yeah.
than had you just had your good cry.
Right. Just let it out. Well, the other thing I'll say is, we've kind of done this same sort of disservice. The number of times people apologize to me when they cry. Um, yeah,
I
people
do
always,
it too.
right, people all the time, this is what we do. We're like, oh, I'm so sorry, it just made me weepy. And my go-to answer, I used to say, oh, that's okay. And now I'm like, never apologize for crying. Never
Yeah.
apologize for feeling your feelings. You get to feel them, and that's okay. Like, they're
Yeah.
valid. You get to
Yeah.
feel them. So,
Yeah.
I never want us to limit that for anybody, that they get to, do
Yeah.
I always understand the feelings? No.
No.
Uh,
Right.
maybe I
Right.
wouldn't believe that I would have the same reaction to a situation. Maybe,
Right.
um, whatever their reaction is, but
Yeah.
never apologize for crying, never apologize for feeling big feelings. I love it when we get to tell little
Big
children,
feelings. Yeah, for
I,
sure. We tell them, you're feeling some big feelings.
yeah, you've
Now,
got some big feelings today.
adults still feel big feelings.
Yes.
I have very big feelings from time to
Mhm.
time.
Yes.
And I love that, never apologize, but also really letting that person know two things. One is, never apologize. I see that you are feeling these big
Yes.
feelings, and I am here with you.
Right.
Here to hold space with you, because then that makes them feel a little bit more comfortable to go, oh, I am seen. And if
Mhm.
you're not able to do that, just simply acknowledge and validate. If it something as simple as being able to say, wow, I see that you are really upset.
Right.
That is all you need to say. I see
Yeah.
that you're really upset.
Mhm.
What can I do for you right now? Or if you can't do anything, just go, I understand. And it's valid for you to feel those feelings.
Right,
I may not be able to bear witness to that right now or hold that space, but I want to acknowledge that you have these feelings and they are valid. That's
right.
all you have to say,
Mm,
and then you can figure out how to move on and they'll, or get them to somebody else, or maybe you could call another friend. I'm so sorry, but
right.
I
Who
just
can I call for you?
right,
Do you,
right,
is there someone who helps you in these situations? Is there
right,
someone that
right.
would be a good
Yeah.
go-to person for you?
Like I've had this situation come up. It's been rare, but I've had some, if I've been in a really low spot and I've got, a friend who calls me up and they're just a hot mess over something that I cannot hold because I got nothing left.
Mhm.
My well is empty. I have had an opportunity to practice and it is uncomfortable. And I go, I hear you, but I need to tell you, I'm going through some shit. I
Yeah,
don't have the capacity to talk about this right now.
yep,
And don't leave it there. And I'm willing to be available to you at another day and time.
right. In a
Can
different.
we table this?
Mhm.
Because again, you're validating and you're not just saying, like, I don't want to hear it.
Mhm.
It's so there's a lot of different ways that you can practice trying on. I'm a big fan of scripts. Trying on a different script.
Mhm.
What would happen if I could say this? How can
Right,
I validate them and yet honor my energetic boundaries? I
right.
don't have the capacity. I don't have the bandwidth right now to be able to do
Yeah,
this. I'm sorry you're going through a tough time, and I'll be happy to, hold space for you, but not today. I
right.
can't do
I'm
it
out of
today.
spoons. My kids always talk
Out
about
of
spoons. I'm
spoons.
out of spoons
Yes.
today. And
Yes.
I hope that one of the things that we as human beings can do is learn to not take that
Not
as a
personal.
judgment or
Right.
yeah, or a dismissal. Yeah. Like
Hmm.
like if someone says they're out of spoons, they're just out of spoons. It's okay. Like they it I've never said I'm out of spoons in a way that was like, I never want to speak to you or be here
Right.
for you. It's just
Right.
literally sometimes I just am just, oh, I don't know that I can take it
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Um, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, because we're not limitless. Spiritually,
Right.
yes. Human wise, from an energetic standpoint,
No.
I mean, emotionally, we have to, and this is where we have to really be careful about how well are we attending to our boundaries and giving
Mhm.
ourselves self-care. Because if you're a chronic compulsive giver, that's what happens is you give and give and give, and then people keep coming to you, and then you become resentful, you get burnt out. So that's another piece of it, is recognizing when you're full up and you're like, I can't talk
Right.
about this right now,
Mhm.
so let's table this discussion,
Right.
so that I can really be present for you. But it really is about the words you use and how you approach someone,
Yeah.
and it takes practice. So if we all feel uncomfortable, we sometimes don't know what to say, but be honest and transparent about that. Gosh, I really don't know what to say. I want to be here for you. I want to hold this space, so I'm trying to find the right words. Or if you say something like, I've had people say this to me and they, like, what's your problem? It's my favorite. What's the problem? You know? And they didn't apologize for that. But if you're having a rough time and that something like that slips out, you
Mhm.
can still apologize and say, I'm sorry. That didn't come out the way I wanted it to. I'm dealing with very few spoons. I've,
Right.
limited bandwidth today. That is not what I meant. But, let me try again. Let me
Right.
try again.
Let me
Let me
do it
try
again.
again.
Mhm.
Three beautiful words to help repair any situation, because this is a really touch and go dance. dancing with grief, dancing with others who are experiencing grief and
Right.
loss. It's a tentative dance, and we're all trying to learn the steps, but you don't learn the steps unless you get out on the dance floor and sometimes step on toes or get your
Right.
toes stepped
Right.
on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just part of that. And so yeah, there's lots of different things you can do to help navigate that. And recognizing that even though I know all these things and we're talking about it, it's like midst of my own grief, I'm like, I don't
No,
know,
I
I don't
got
know what to
nothing.
do. Yeah,
Uh,
I don't remember any of that.
I do want to remind everyone the power of silence in those moments
That's
and
a
just
good.
literally being in a room with someone. I don't have to, I don't have to be there for, I mean, I've gone to funerals of people I didn't know because somebody just needed the support. I've had other people come to funerals with me.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's important to remember that I can say the words, like I am here for you, whatever you need me. I can sit here with you as a dear, dear friend of mine lost a loved one. It was her sweet, sweet puppy. And we were on the phone and she said, I think she stopped breathing. And I said, I'm on my way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I thought I could miraculously bring the dog back because clearly I
Right.
couldn't, by the time I got there, surely not, because she lives out of town.
Right.
It was literally just because she just needed someone in that moment. She needed someone to
Mhm.
hold that space and to let her grieve and know
Right.
that she was safe and somebody
Right.
else was there with her experiencing
Right.
that grief and she couldn't put her puppy down. So when she needed to do things like go to the restroom or it's like, no, I'll just hang on to her. Like, it's okay. We'll just, because
Yeah.
sometimes that's all you can do is just be present. I didn't have magic words. I
Right.
couldn't make it better. I couldn't change it, but all I could do was the thing. And I think not only it wasn't just all I could do, it was the only thing that really, um,
Right.
could be given to anyone in that situation at that moment was this. Like
Yeah.
I could let you know that you're important and the situation is important and you matter in this moment. You both matter. She mattered, you matter,
Yeah.
like this is
Yeah.
important. And
Exactly.
holding space when even when you don't have you feel like you have no value to that space.
Right.
Um,
Right.
that's we are beings, so we're always
Mhm.
trying to do something.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so that can be a challenging piece to
Yeah.
realize the power of just being there with
Mhm.
someone.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that that's key. Although I would say for a person who is grieving
Mhm.
that sometimes movement is good from a
Right.
yogic and physiological perspective. Emotions get stuck in our body.
Mhm.
There's a saying that we have issues in our tissues. And so if you're finding, like if you're getting irritable a lot, or if you're feeling like, gosh, I've just been sitting on the couch after work every day for a week and I don't know why I feel so lethargic and sometimes you've just got to move. There's
Right.
actually a program out there called grief dance or grief
Mhm.
yoga, I think it is. And it is just kind of a free form movement that's guided to have you access your emotions as you're moving your body, to help release some of that.
Yeah.
It's not a band-aid. It's not going to cure it, but it might provide some needed relief, um, as you are navigating. So it's just another tool to put in the toolbox for
Yeah.
yourself or others. Somebody else is like, that might be struggling with grief. Let's go for a quick walk.
Right.
We're just gonna go for a walk in the park and I'll listen. And that's
Right.
all,
Mm.
so that might be helpful too, just to change the scenery or whatever. And not for the express purposes of helping them get over it,
Right.
but helping them to continue to move through it,
Yes.
what I would say.
Move
Yeah.
along. Move along with
Move,
it.
yeah, move along, dance with it,
Hmm.
dance with it, you know? Oh, well,
Yeah.
this was helpful for me. I don't know about anybody else,
Yeah.
but to just remind ourselves that there's no timetable. Feelings are going to pop up, and there's a number of different things that you can do. But first and foremost, give yourself self-compassion, give others compassion,
Mm-hmm.
because grief, like love, like I think of all emotions. If you think about emotions as being energy in motion, they exist in space all the time,
Right.
everywhere, right? At
Mm-hmm.
any given moment, I can access several different emotions all at once. And if I recognize that they are like, um, did you ever see that? What was that movie? It was the cartoon movie where they had drawn characters for all the different emotions. Shoot, I
Oh,
wish I could
it's
remember.
like an emoji movie. I've never seen it, but
Yeah,
I
it was
yes,
Disney.
mhm,
It was
yes.
Disney. And I loved that idea that within us, we have all these little beings that all they want to do is be heard. They don't ever go away. They're a part of the life existence,
Mm-hmm.
their life experience. And so regularly inviting them in for tea. If you didn't hear from them for a while, they might come knocking on the door and you're like, oh, I haven't seen you, grief, for a
Oh,
while. Let me pull up some tea and let's see what we need to
right. What we
hear
need
from you.
to do.
So, but it's all normal. It's all part of the process, and it's all part of this beautiful thing we have called life.
Yes, messy, beautiful life.
I know. I know. I did sit on the edge of my bed today and cry about Toby because I do miss him.
Love that.
So,
Right.
but
Right.
yeah.
He's lovely. He's an amazing creature. Loves everything about him.
Well, I mean, I feel like I've navigated several lives with him. He
Yeah.
was a soulmate for sure, but that's a topic for another podcast. I think we'll wrap it up, and I'm going to invite people to get out, stretch, go
Yes.
move your body for a little bit, breathe in the fresh air, and just
Oh,
change
yes.
the scenery. But hopefully, we hope that this conversation helped you in some way. Drop us a comment, let us know what you think, and we'll be back in a couple weeks to talk about some more nuances of life and death and everything in between. So thank you, my friend. I really appreciate you.
Yeah. Much love.
All right, we'll see everybody.